Yeah, my name's Fraser Hutchinson. I'm head of partnerships at Creative Access, and my background's publishing. I've worked across children's books and educational publishing, academic publishing for the last sort of 15 years or so. And this year I was really privileged to be asked to be the chair of judges for the Inclusivity in Publishing Award at the London Book Fair. And my fellow judges and I were very pleased to announce that Hachette won the award this year. And I'm here today, albeit virtually, with Nick Davis, who is MD at John Murray Press. Nick, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi Fraser. Yes, I'm Managing Director of John Murray Press, which is one of the 10 publishing divisions at Hachette. But I wear various other hats at work too. So one of the most important ones has been to be a co-chair of Changing the Story alongside Charmaine Lovegrove of Dialogue Books, which we've done for a few years, and we're both patrons of that now. So just for people who don't know, Changing the Story is the sort of umbrella name for all of our diversity and inclusion projects that are going on at Hachette. So I've been lucky enough to be nominated to accept the award today, which is great, but it's been very much a team effort, as no doubt we'll go into.
Absolutely. So just for those listening, just in terms of the criteria for the award and how we were judging the Inclusivity and Publishing Award, I mean, we were looking for publishing companies who essentially demonstrated a holistic approach, so a 360 commitment to improving diversity across the whole of the kind of publishing ecosystem. So that included diversity in terms of the content you produced at Hachette, any kind of marketing strategies and activities to address diverse communities, and then also to, I guess, a commitment to improve equality in the workforce. And when we say equality and diversity, that includes disabilities, people from low socioeconomic backgrounds, ethnicity, those in the LGBT community, and cultural and racial equality as well. And I think what the judges were particularly impressed by with Hachette was your work on diversity and inclusion across all areas of the business. And for instance, how you'd worked really hard across ethnicity and pay gaps, and putting plans into place to really kind of look at those pay gaps, what they were and how to address those. Could you talk me through a little bit of the work that was involved with that?
Yeah, of course. I suppose the first thing to say is kind of meaningful change starts with understanding who you are as a business. So I think looking at pay gaps is incredibly important. It's a huge amount of work behind the scenes, looking at pay gaps, looking at representation across the business. So given the size of our business, it's been mandatory for us to report on our gender pay gap for a few years now. But we've also started voluntarily reporting on our ethnicity pay gap too over the last couple of years. And as well as looking to close those gaps, we've kind of set ourselves some interim targets. So on the gender balance side, we're looking to make sure that the top quartile of the company is reflective of the gender balance of the company as a whole. And since that first gender pay gap report, I'm pleased to say the main board at Hachette has flipped from just being 1/3 female to being majority female. So there's some progress there, which is good. And on the ethnicity side, there's a big question around representation, as I know there is right across the industry. So we've set ourselves the target to be at least 15% the staff to be made up of Black, Asian, minority ethnic backgrounds in the next 5 years. That's in line with what the PA has set out. And we've seen some progress there, nowhere near enough. So we've gone from just under 8% to just under 10% in the last 2 years. So the gaps are closing, representation is increasing, but it's a painful and sobering experience, I'd say, overall. And we've got a long way to go. But I think almost as important as looking at the data is discussing it in a really open and honest way. So I think the workshops that our CEO and our HR director have put in place have been absolutely vital. So it's a kind of safe space for all of us to gather and talk about what the data means and agree, kind of co-create an action plan for the company. So we do that after all of our pay gaps, and they're very well attended. And yeah, we try and pull out some action points, which I'm happy to talk through if that would be useful.
Yeah, please do. Go for it. Yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, these are sort of hour-long sessions. We had about 600 people come to the last ethnicity pay gap workshop. We pulled out things like the Diverse Future Leaders Mentoring Scheme, which has been running for a few years now, which matches employees from underrepresented backgrounds with board members. We recently created a mirror board, which is a kind of leadership program for high potential colleagues from Black, Asian, minority ethnic backgrounds to try and expand their business understanding and accelerate their progression through the business so we can see more diversity within the senior leadership team. We've put company-wide cultural awareness training in place. We're looking at our recruitment practices, our partners, including creative access, and we're doing a lot around pay and pay banding, which maybe we'll come back to later.
Yeah, that's interesting on the pay banding and the pay transparency. I mean, that's something that we're really heavily advocating for at Creative Access at the moment. And actually, we did a recent piece of work where we analysed, I think, the latest sort of 500 listings that were on our job board. And we found that those companies that withheld their salary or kind of put competitive in inverted commas received 40% fewer applicants than those where the salary or salary band was stated. And I think that is really, really important in terms of, you know, openness and honesty and transparency and access across the publishing sector. And as you say, well, you referenced it there, and obviously you put it in your application for the award as well, about your work on pay transparency. Can you sort of tell me the work you're doing there and your aspirations in terms of pay transparency across Hachette?
Yeah, I think it echoes exactly what you've just been saying, really. I think transparency around pay and progression too has been far too opaque. I think it's held the industry back for a long time. And I guess we're doing two things. One is that very simple thing you mentioned about putting salaries on job ads, competitive. Just putting that helps absolutely nobody. It just makes everything feel much more secretive. We're also looking at, well, we have been publishing pay bands internally, so staff know where they sit within the pay bands and what progression looks like to get to the next stage. So I think both of those things are really important. And I think there's a wider point about kind of all publishers need to try and demystify the industry about what we do, the range of roles that are available, the skills required, what you can expect to be paid, and what progression looks like. It feels like the industry has been too secretive for too long, and as I say, to nobody's benefit, it shouldn't feel like a secret club.
That's very well. That aligns very well with what we do at Creative Access, and very heartening to hear. I think what we've spoken about already is around kind of workforce and structures and so on and so forth. I was also really impressed in your application about the work that you've been doing on auditing your author diversity and auditing the output in terms of diversity. Could you tell me a little bit more about that as well?
Yeah, it's pretty early days there, but it goes back to the earlier point. You know, if we really want to understand where we are as a business, we need to understand the data. So we've just gone out with that actually in the last 6 weeks or so with a massive author survey. And I think part of the trick is trying to explain about why we're doing it and why it is important, so that we get enough authors responding to have a kind of meaningful starting point. So I think it's going to take more work. I think it's going to take a few more years to build up a really truly honest picture of where we are as a business, but it's underway.
Fantastic. And what's next for Hachette in terms of your diversity and inclusion agenda? Again, I was really impressed in your application around, you know, this diversity and inclusion being a strategic pillar for you as an organisation to really kind of flow and really be embedded across all you do. What are your future kind of aspirations in terms of this conversation?
Good question. I mean, keeping it feeding through the business, really. So we have a goal. Everybody has a goal within that annual performance review. Their first goal, in fact, says, what are you going to do to deliver a quantifiable contribution to D&I this year? So everybody has to think about it. They're all part of it. I guess the two big initiatives for us this year, one is around national offices. So we're on the brink of opening 5 new national offices in Edinburgh, Manchester, Sheffield, Bristol, and Newcastle, as soon as the government lets us, which I think will be a game changer in terms of breaking the dominance of London and widening the talent pool and getting closer to authors and booksellers and readers. So that's very exciting. And then I guess the second thing is this year is actually the 5th anniversary of Changing the Story, and we wanted to mark it with some big initiatives. So we're doing something called Opening the Book, which is about demystifying the industry, which I talked about earlier. So we're doing some panels, which Charmaine is leading on, explaining what we do in publishing, how to get a job, how to progress, etc. And I'm leading on some author festivals later this year to try and demystify the industry for authors who feel underrepresented or marginalised and want to get their books published.
Well, fantastic, and yeah, congratulations again. Thoroughly deserved, and great to speak to you this morning.
Thanks, Fraser.